Hey guys, this is Mark. Welcome to FlowRunner training. In this series, we review sample flows included into the FlowRunner training workspace. And in this video, I will review a flow that is called Daily Reminder Email. The story for that flow goes like this. So you have a database with just one table, and that table stores a list of to-do tasks. And every record in that table has a task description, when date, when it's due, and responsible party. And the responsible party is just an email address. Very trivialized representation of a traditional to-do scenario. You can apply this to a team or group of people or an individual task list. It doesn't matter. So the flow that we review is configured with FlowRunner to wake up once a day, every 24 hours, grab a list of to-do tasks that are due today on the day when it wakes up, and go through that list and then send an email to every responsible party, so every person that has a to-do item that is due today, an email saying you have a to-do item that is due today, and that's it. So very simple. Of course, more elaborate, more production quality flows would have a lot more rules attached to it, but the mechanics of obtaining a list of tasks that are due on a particular day or time frame and notifying the responsible parties is going to be the same. And that's what this flow is about. So just like with all the other flows, I will demonstrate how it works. There is a companion page that comes with the flow that gives you an ability to add additional to-do items into the database, modify them, delete as you'd like, and then start the flow. So this way you don't have to wait for the whole 24 hours for the flow to kick in and do what it does. So you can actually initiate that flow execution right from that web page. So let's just jump in and see how that flow works. And after that, we will go into the flow implementation to really understand how it is structured and how it is implemented. Click the Start Flow button. Make sure you are in the daily reminder email flow. You could also start the flow right from the flow manager screen. And on the same screen, when you select daily reminder email in the instructions tab, you will see a link to a UI page that you can use to run that actual flow. Starting and running are two different things. When you start, you basically say, hey, flow, you can now start running according to the schedule, or it can be invoked by using the API. Anyway, so the UI page for this flow looks like this. And at the very top, this is a table. Right now, it is empty because there is nothing in the database. There are no to-do tasks created. So let's start by creating a task. And click this plus icon, and right here, responsible user email. It will be mark@backendless.com, my email address. And the task will be record a FlowRunner training video. The new due date is going to be today. Today is January 30th. So now, and then click this save icon. So now there is a to-do task in the database. In fact, if you return to FlowRunner and go to quick access and select database under data service, then you will get to this screen. And on this screen, if you select the tasks table, this is the record that was just created using that UI page. So the UI page saves the data into the database and it sits in the tasks table. Notice that there are columns such as description, which is the description of the to-do task, whether it's done or not, when it's due, whether the email notification was sent or not, and the responsible user email. So at this point, if we go back to that page, there is this run flow button, and this button just runs that flow rather than waiting for a scheduled run for the calendar that it had. So click this button. Now the flow was executed successfully, and I'm going to go to my email and see, and here it is. I received that email, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so this is the email that was just sent by FlowRunner. So as you can see, it was sent to me by me because that's how I configured it in the flow. But it says, well, your task is recording a FlowRunner training video. It is due today. So that's how it works. And if I had more tasks in the database, then of course there would be more than one email, and then the emails will go to whatever email address that you put in that table. So now that you have seen how it works, let's take a look at how it is implemented. So for this, I'm returning to FlowRunner, and let's stop this flow just because we can start getting a little more information about individual blocks. The very first block that is executed, it's always off of the start circle right here, uses this action, find records in database. And this action is located in the actions section under data service. Here it is. Here it is, find records in database. What this action does is it fetches data from the database that sits in your workspace, and then you can select the table from where the data is going to be fetched. So we select the table, which is tasks, and then this field right here, clause, it uses basically a query, and then it's called where clause because it has the same syntax as a where part in SQLs, which is kind of more technical stuff. But this is super flexible syntax to express what you want to retrieve. And then in this query, we can reference the columns that exist in the tasks table. Let's take a look at the table again. And by the way, notice that there is due and done. So in the data table, there is a due column, and then there is a done column. So we want to fetch all the records where done is set to no or is false, and due equals today. Okay, so then let's take a look at the query. So here it is, due less than or equals current time, and done equals false. Okay, and in fact, let's click on this icon and see it is an expression editor. So this is basically text input. You just put this in, and then the current time is a special element that is available under common values. So in common values, here it is current time. So this will become like one query that is sent to the database. So and then all the records that match this query will be returned by this block. And then you can always test to see how it works by turning on test mode and then clicking this icon right here. So here it is. You click, and that's what the query returns. It returns just one item that is due today. Okay. Then the next step, so we can turn off test mode. Then after that, well, by the way, when it runs, if there is an error, it's going to go to the handle error and the flow stops. However, if there are no errors, it proceeds to the next block. And the next block is, it is called, well, we gave it a name of get list length operation. But the block itself is transform data. You can see the transform data block in the toolbox under utils right here, transform data. And transform data, by the way, is like one of those blocks that is a Swiss Army knife. It can do so many different things. So one of them, the key elements of this block is that right here, operation. It has a lot of operations that are available right here. Okay, the operation that we use in this flow is called get list length. And the parameter is tasks list. Tasks list is what's returned by find tasks in database. See right here, tasks list. So we're getting the result of this block and we're passing it into here. Okay. And this transform data get the length of this list and returns it as tasks count. Okay. And why it does this will become apparent in the next block, which is repeat. So repeat works as a loop. Okay. Whatever it contains inside of this repeat, and we will get there in a second, will be executed for a certain number of times. Okay. And then in our case, it will execute exactly the same number of times as the size of this list. So find tasks returns a list. This one gets the size of this list. And this one will run as many times as the size of that list. So that's how it is all stringed together. Notice that in this repeat block, it has a condition, basically, when it should stop. So the condition defines when it will run or when it should stop. So what it does is it takes this value to check. Now, value to check is it is set to current iteration number. Okay, so a repeat block has a special value that is called current iteration number. So when the repeat starts, current iteration number is 0 for the first iteration. And then after that, the current iteration number will be 1, and then 2, and so on. So we want to run this repeat while current iteration number is less than tasks count. So if tasks count is 1, because in this case we got 1 task, and current iteration number starts with 0. So here in the operation, we say, well, as long as this guy is less than the size of our list, run this iteration. After it runs this iteration, this one is incremented by 1. So it runs for the first task, then this becomes 1. And then this condition will not go through, because 1 is not less than the size of this tasks count, the size of the tasks list. Okay, so how do you get a hold of this current iteration number? If you click on this icon, in here in the flow context, you will see this current iteration number, and that's what sits in here. So, and this will appear whenever you have the repeat block. Then you will get access to the current iteration number. So a couple of important things here to remember. Number one, whenever you use repeat block, there is a special element that represents the current iteration, the number of the current iteration. And that element starts with 0. Whenever you run this block to fetch data from the database, it always returns a collection. Even if there's only one record, it is going to be a collection of record. By the way, how do you know that? Well, let's turn the test mode again and run this block. What you see here is called JSON. In JSON, whenever you have the contents of it in these square brackets, it means it is a collection. Okay? And then this is a collection of one object. So whenever you see curly braces, it is an object. So this is the record from the database, and it sits inside of our list, a JSON list. Again, we got this collection, got the size of that collection, and then we started a loop which will run as many times as the number of items in our collection. But what happens inside of this repeat? So let's step inside and see what's going on in there. So these blocks will execute for every item in our to-do list. Okay. Number one, we run this again, transform data, and the operation is get list item and index. Okay. Because what we want to do is we want to get, whenever we run for the first time, get the first to-do item. Second time, get the second to-do item. Third, and so on. Okay. So what this transform operation, transform data does is given the tasks list. Okay. This is what was returned from the database. We are getting an item at the index that corresponds to the current iteration number. Remember when I said when we start the repeat, current iteration number is set to 0. So in here, guess what? We're going to go to this tasks list and say, give me whatever you have at the index 0. And index 0 is the first item. And then this will be returned as task. Okay, so this will really obtain the task at the specified index. Okay. Then after that, there's a second block, which is also transform data. And then in here, we're transforming data from whatever is returned by the database to a specified format. Why do we need to do this? Well, let's step back and I'll show you why. So we turn on test mode again and rerun this data, this operation from the database. Notice that the due date is this long number, okay? And if you're not familiar to programming, then this will look surprising. If you are, then you will know what this is. This is actually how systems represent date and time. And then what this number means is the number of milliseconds that has passed to the point of time that this value represents since January 1st, 1970. And that is called sort of Unix time. I think that's exactly what it's called. So what we need to do is we need to take this number and transform it to a human readable format, just so that when that email comes, we can actually say when it is due. Because if we say, hey, Mark, your task is due at this time frame, and just provide this huge number, no one will understand it. So we need to convert it to something that is meaningful and is easy to understand by humans. And that's exactly what's happening inside of this repeat block by this operation. So we take the data that came from the database and we say, transform it to this format. And this format is kind of well-known format. There, it's documented where, uppercase M represents month, lowercase dd represents date, lowercase four y's represents year, hours, minutes, and then this is AM, PM. So this is like a special notation, and it is documented in our docs. So once this block runs, then the result of it will become known as due date. Okay. By the way, notice that right here, when we pass in date, we are referencing task. Now, task is something that is returned by this block, task. So we took out that task from our collection returned by the database, and now we can work on it by referencing it in our flow. Okay. So this task is something that was basically taken out from the database query. Finally, once we are done with these two, send message, which is an action that comes from Gmail extension. And then Gmail extension comes from the marketplace. So right here, click marketplace and you have Gmail. Click install if you don't have it. Then send message puts together an email that is sent to the user. Okay. Whenever you open this flow, you will not have, of course, an active connection. So you will have a login button here. Click login. Right now, Google has not approved our connection with Google yet. We're working with Google on that. So you will get a warning saying that that hasn't been approved yet. Would you like to continue? And so on. So go ahead and continue, authenticate, create this connection, and then that's the account that will be used to send out emails. And then the rest of it is really just putting it all together. So the to field is going to be task, responsible user email. What is this responsible user email? Well, it is the column name in the database. And that's how you reference that value in your flow. So here it is, responsible user email. When you click on it, you can just type in the name of the column. The body content is the most interesting one because here it basically puts together the whole thing that is being that goes into the email, and which I think is pretty straightforward. We're referencing description of the task. We're taking the due date, which is the result of this operation, and then putting it together right here. Okay, and then from it says FlowRunner, but you can put whatever. And then this is done. And this is done for the first iteration. Again, this will repeat for every single task that you have in that collection. That's it. I know that sounds like a lot, but the flow is actually quite simple. So all these things that I described, they really become the foundational knowledge that you need to have to start working with this flow. And some of these things are pretty low level, like working with collections, working with extracting data from collections and working data on individual key value structures or objects. And in some flows, you have to do this. And then FlowRunner, I believe, makes it pretty easy once you kind of get the hang of it and start building these flows. There's going to be a separate video where we put together this flow starting from scratch, just basically developing it as we go. And I recommend that this is something that you also watch and repeat to really understand how to do this by yourself. But for now, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found this useful, and as always, happy automating.